Welcome to Adventures in Coffee, a podcast by Caffeine Magazine sponsored by Oatly.
In this second series, Jools and I explore the world of coffee for people who are curious about what's in their daily cup.
Now, we are all becoming more and more engaged in where our food and drink comes from. So we made this podcast to demystify the complicated world of coffee and definitely have some laughs along the way.
And this is our Adventures in Your Kitchen mini-series, where we help you brew better coffee at home.
But that's a bit of a lie though, because what we're going to be doing is giving you tips and tricks on how to find a great cup of coffee while you're out and about on the streets. I'm Jules Walker, a proud East Londoner who you might find in a trendy coffee shop in East London. I'm a cycling advocate and your very everyday coffee lover.
I'm Scott Bentley, I'm the founder of Caffeine Magazine, and I'm also an art director. And I'll be someone who's got their nose buried inside a bag of coffee, sniffing those notes and looking at the flavour notes.
Also known as a coffee dork.
How very dare you.
Now, Scott, this is something that's actually quite close to my heart, and it pains me to talk about this, where I've had previous not so great experiences in coffee shops.
Tell me your pain. Tell me what's the problem.
I went to one of my favourite coffee shops that I like to hang around in. And, you know, everything was great. You know, the vibes were good. The customer service was brilliant. The cup of coffee that was presented to me, however, wasn't. And it just tasted like ashy and burn, and I couldn't finish it. And I was just like, am I supposed to be looking for particular things that I can't just rely on the coffee shop just being good because once upon a time it was?
Yeah, like so many things to unpack here. But I do have a sort of a hit list, you know, a set of things that I look out for when going to a new place. And I'm willing to share those with you, Jules.
I would love your pearls of wisdom.
So the first thing I would say is that 5 years ago, you could kind of see a specialty coffee shop. You'd walk down the road, you'd look at it and you'd kind of go, hey, that's a specialty coffee shop. Because, you know, all of the chairs are a bit mismatched.
Yeah.
You know, the tables are all a bit rough.
Yeah.
You know, baristas look ridiculously trendy and cool. There were these things that you saw and you went, yeah, specialty coffee shop. And what that means is great coffee.
It's true. There was that aesthetic. That was a marker.
But the problem is, much like the Irish theme pub, those things have been taken, stop laughing, they've been taken by people that don't know how to make great coffee, and they've been, you know, used. And so you go past these coffee shops, you go, looks like a great coffee shop, and then you have a terrible experience. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to teach you a few things to look out for. So even if it does look like a high-end, trendy specialty coffee shop, you'll know very, very quickly whether it really is or not.
So, Scott, what sorts of things are these we're looking at?
I'm looking for three kind of main things. So I'm going to split these up into milk, beans, and interaction, which we can also call service, if you like.
All right then, Scott. So once you've told me what these things are, why don't we head down to some coffee shops in London with our producer, James, and put them to the test?
Yeah, sure. I'm game.
You sound pretty confident. You're not nervous at all about your framework coming ever so slightly undone.
Not at all. Solid as a rock.
Nobody questions the confidence of the King of Caffeine.
But before we get going, let's have a quick word from our sponsor.
And this is a sustainability hack brought to you by Oatly. Scott, tell me about the love of your life.
Oh, you mean my coffee machine?
Yes, your coffee machine.
My wife hopefully isn't listening to this.
Can you tell me, where does your energy for your coffee machine come from?
That'll be the plug socket on the wall.
Clever lad, but no. Now, as you know, our friends Oatly have enlightened us with the statistic that about 25% of a UK citizen's carbon footprint actually comes from the energy used in our own homes. So how green is your energy?
Do you know, it's funny you should say this. I actually went for a green energy provider about 6 months ago, and they recently went bankrupt. And I was effectively shunted over to a big dirty oil company.
mate, same thing going on right here. But, I'll be switching as soon as I possibly can.
But I think it's totally worth it because I'll be safe in the knowledge knowing that my espresso machine is wind powered.
Well, Scott, you talk enough hot air, so you could probably power the thing yourself, couldn't you?
Thanks, babe.
Love you, really.
And that was a sustainability hack brought to you by Oatly. Jules, the first thing that I would always look for when I walk into a coffee shop is I'm thinking about the beans. So the first thing I'm looking for is where's the grinder, because that's where the beans are. And I'm also listening. I'm listening for the grinder as well. Now, a really good coffee shop will grind your coffee on demand, and a bad coffee shop will grind a lot of coffee and they'll just hold it in that grinder until you walk in. And that's a problem because they're not grinding that coffee fresh for you. And the reason for this is simply that coffee goes off once it's been ground within seconds. If that coffee is not being put straight into the machine once it's been ground, to me, instantly, red flag.
So grind and brew it immediately. That's the key.
Absolutely. My second tip, again, very much about the beans, is try and take a peek at them. So essentially, the grinder is always housed next to the espresso machine itself.
Right.
And generally speaking, it has a translucent bowl on top of it. These sort of bowls is where the beans will be tipped into prior to them grinding the coffee. That there is the hopper. Now take a look at it. Is it dirty and oily inside? Now, personally, I don't like shiny, dark, overly roasted coffee. But basically what I'm trying to say here is, look at that hopper. Is it dirty? Because if it is, it says to me there's a general lack of care and attention with the equipment that the barista is using.
Oh, that's pretty interesting, Scott. All right, then. What's next?
Okay, this is my third tip about the beans. I would be really looking at every opportunity to see who the roaster of those coffee beans are.
Oh, okay.
Now, I would always be looking for names that I know, specialty coffee roasters, naturally, because I'd also know that that coffee shop, if they were buying their beans from there, had probably had some level of training from that roaster as well. Now, if, however, I see rows of generic silver or gold bags, I'd probably turn on my heel there and then. Because again, what this is saying to me is that this coffee shop is not focused on quality. They're looking for the cheapest coffee that they can find.
Geez, Scott, I think we need to start calling that the Bentley bounce, that you're just going to leave if, it's no good.
Not spending my well-earned money on people that don't care. Okay, Jules, let's talk milk, and obviously oat milk and all the alternatives. First thing I look for is the milk out on the counter, going warm, and is it cheap milk? And what I mean by that is it like Tesco's value whole milk, or is it barista milk?
So what, bog standard milk from the supermarket is a red flag? If I see that in their fridges, it's a no-no.
It's not a hard no. It's a little kind of like, ooh, okay. The hard no, the literally turn on my heel, is dirty steam ones.
Oh, yeah, okay. I want you to elaborate on this, but that's already making me feel a bit like, ugh.
I've been in coffee shops that have called themselves specialty, and I have seen white, crusty steam ones. It just shows a lack of cleanliness from the people serving you coffee. And for me, that's a no.
Every single time a coffee is being made and it's going to have some steamed milk in it, I guess you're supposed to be looking for the barista to be wiping that thing immediately and that it's ready to roll for the next customer.
Absolutely. Yeah, and also you hear, they'll steam their milk.
Yeah.
And then you hear a little jet afterward going tss, tss, where they're kind of flushing any residue of that milk out of the steam wand. And this also brings me on to the steaming of the milk. I'm just going to replay some of the tape that we recorded in a previous episode with Heidi. And this is about how you should be listening for the steaming of that milk. If you hear that, run a mile or at least put some earplugs in.
absolutely horrid.
Now, we're going to play another piece here. Now, this is when they put too much air into the milk. And you essentially get that weird thing where it's like candy floss. There's so much air in the milk that it doesn't actually weigh anything.
It's like a mouthful of air and then not a particularly great coffee following through afterwards. And it's just like a mouthful of disappointment instead of it just being something unctuous. So nobody wants a mouthful of disappointment, do they? So.
Not. And hopefully, if you follow these tips, you won't get any on my watch either. And this is how it should sound.
It sounds soothing in comparison
It does
to.
sound soothing.
It's a shame because pigs are cute animals, but the pig squeal coming from making your milk, you don't want that. And the candy floss, which I absolutely love, that's not what you want either when it comes to your milk.
Let's get to the last thing, and it's latte art. Now, don't get me wrong. Latte art for me is probably one of the lowest things on my list. You're not necessarily going to get a bad cup of coffee if you've got bad latte art. However, what it does say to me, again, is a level of skill, a level of knowledge. But, it's not a hard no if the latte art isn't on point.
Now, just on the latte art thing, like once you've stepped into the coffee shop and you've ordered your coffee, you've gone past the point of no return. Because they're going to make it for you. So what's a way of checking out the quality of the latte art of a coffee shop?
Yeah, I mean, the two ways I do it is, if it's a brand new coffee shop, which I'm looking to go to, I will check them out on Instagram. And yeah, I'll be judging your latte art.
Watching you, judging you.
But also, when you're going to the coffee shop, I'll be looking at other people's cups. I'll be looking at what they're drinking.
Just imagining you sticking your nose into somebody else's coffee to check out that it's all okay.
Can you imagine me leering over someone's shoulders going, let me look at your latte art.
I'm not too sure about your tulip there.
Okay, Jules, we're going to get to the final section of this framework. I'm going to call this interaction, customer service. Comes under many things, but essentially it's kind of like, what is that dialogue between you and the barista like? One of the tricks that I always use whenever I go into a brand new coffee shop is when they say to me, what would you like? Or, what's your order? I'll say to them, what's good? What do you recommend?
Ian does do that when we go to coffee shops. He loves to ask that question, and I need to jump in and do that a bit more.
Absolutely. Their answer is essentially the key to, are they engaged in this? And I know that sounds like, well, for God's sake, what do you expect? I mean, they're on a minimum wage or something like that. But people generally don't go into coffee just as a job. They generally do have some passion for it. And especially in high-end coffee shops, coffee shops which are serving great coffee, where the people have a passion for it, you would expect to hear that passion from the people working in there too. So if I say to someone, what's good? And I get, flat white. I'm like,
It doesn't really tell you anything, does it?
So I won't order straight away.
Yeah.
I'll then ask another question. I'll be then like, okay, what kind of coffee beans have you got? What's in the hopper? And they may be going, it's our house blend, or something super generic. Or the other thing is they'll go, I don't know, hang on. And they'll go and ask the manager what the coffee is. Or they'll scrabble around under the counter for the coffee bag and they'll start, looking at it and kind of going, it says Brazil, 50% Costa Rica. To me, that's someone that doesn't understand the tools of their trade.
Yeah. Do you know what? That's something like in restaurants. Like quite recently, I went out to have some food. And for the first time in a while, I didn't find myself feeling super embarrassed to see something on the menu, not know what it was, and just ask. And it turned out it was a particular cut of beef. I didn't know that. And that was great to find out. But they went the extra length and explained why it's called that, why this is the cut of beef, what part of the cow it's come from. And it's just like, okay, that's next level. So I want to be able to do that when I go into a coffee shop as well. I want that confidence to be able to ask.
Absolutely. Now, sometimes what's really good is when they ask you a question back. And they may say to you, well, we've got a few things on. What do you like?
Right.
And Do you like African coffees? Do you like South American coffees? Are you looking for something funky? Are you looking for something clean? And what they're doing then is they're being really engaged because they really want to give you the best experience that they possibly can. Yeah. And I also know if I hate this coffee and I take it back to them, I go, guys, thank you for the recommendation. It wasn't my thing. 99% of the time they're going to go, what do you want? I'll make something else for you. Because it just says to me, you care.
Yeah.
Right. So, I mean, that's all my tips. You look for the beans, you look for the milk, and you check out the service.
All right then, Scott. That's all well and good. But we need to put this to the test. So you, me, and producer man James are going to go and pound the pavement and test out your framework and see how it holds up.
Can't you just take my word for it? I mean, I'm good for this.
Oh,
you don't need to go and put it under a stress test, Jules.
That's not you getting worried, is it? Just in case your framework falls apart and the coffee snob actually gets it wrong?
Fine. Let's go. Let's go and pound that pavement.
So, dear listener, a few weeks have since passed, and one fine windy day, me, Scott, and James went out to the streets of Shoreditch to put the framework to the test.
Well, peeps, here we are. Busy day. Food market's around the corner. Someone's painting black onto some tarmac over there. I don't know why.
Apparently it's called art.
But we are here to do something very special. What are we here to do?
We're here to test out coffee shops.
Yes, to find out what makes a good coffee shop and the telltale signs of the good, the bad, and the
damn
not
right
frothy.
ugly.
I have selected a number of coffee shops, which on the surface you would think, no questions, this is specialty.
I think they're showing good face, but we're not sure if they've actually got what it takes to back up that front.
So we pounded the pavements of Shoreditch for a while.
It's got a sort of a shabby chic vibe.
And eventually we came across the first of the 3 coffee shops that James had up his sleeve.
Yeah. Food on slate.
And the light bulbs are sort of like exposed tungsten bulbs that you see.
So things got interesting when I went inside of the coffee shop. Now, obviously you want to have a bit of chat. So first up, I had a conversation with the barista and it was pretty good. And then we got on to talking about the beans and where they came from.
No, that's actually a blend. That's 100% fair trade organic Arabica from 3 different origins. So yeah, it comes from abroad though.
Oh wow.
We get them from Scotland.
Oh, amazing.
This sounds quite fluffy, doesn't it? It sounds all quite woolly. It's like something I read on the side of a bag.
And then things kind of got a bit problematic when it came to actually making the Oatly latte. The steam wand was wiped, but it wasn't actually purged. And then the beans...
I observed that my beans were not ground fresh for me.
And the other thing I noticed is that as the barista put the grinder on and left it on and left it on and left it on, and it was grinding for probably nearly a minute.
And the other thing is that it was kind of messy. Like there were coffee grounds everywhere, like all around the grinder. And the beans themselves...
They were dark looking beans. They looked a bit shiny.
I mean, it wasn't a problem per se, but there were loads of bags sitting on the shelves around the shop, and I didn't really get the impression that the coffee was freshly roasted.
How is this on the Latte Art scale?
It's not brilliant.
And then, when I actually came outside with my coffee, the Latte Art wasn't so great either.
Like, I've literally not had it for 5 minutes, and already it's starting to sink.
So I'm looking here. There's a lot of red flags for me. This is all pointing to what's probably not going to be a great cup of coffee.
Jules, have a taste. What do you think? Are you happy with that coffee?
It tastes burnt. There's a really sort of burnt, heavy taste to it.
It feels very astringent as well in the mouth. It really dries your mouth out.
So I would probably not end up finishing this, in all honesty.
So, Scott, congratulations, baby. Your framework held up.
Hey, good stuff.
So, it doesn't stop there.
I got to say, the next one that James took us to, that looks super on point.
I had high hopes. It was gorgeous. It was really, really aesthetically pleasing just to look at from the outside. So it had this whole 2-tone design going on, and you could see like the succulents that were on display in the window, almost like an art gallery.
And also, I had a little something riding on this as well. My kind of reputation was kind of on point on this one. Do you want to tell the listener why that was?
It could be because this coffee shop, the next one that we went to, carries a particular magazine.
A particular coffee publication.
Caffeine mag as
Never
well.
heard of it.
So
Never heard of it. So the thing is, I kind of pride myself on only putting caffeine into the very best coffee shops.
of course.
And I kind of dropped the ball because I've never actually drunk coffee in here before. I'd just been on recommendation. So it was good that we went here because it kind of put everything to the test again.
Now, Scott, as I remember, when we were stood outside that shop on that very busy road, you took me through your checklist.
I'll be completely honest. When caffeine came out, I was brutal about where they went and still am today. I used to send people a questionnaire asking them what coffee machine they have, do they have a water system, what coffee beans are they using, do they get SCA training, and I would only give magazines to coffee shops that would essentially give me that information that I wanted. If they didn't give me the information or they argued the point, it was usually a question of like, listen, if you're good, if you're not getting the magazines.
But there was still the chance that even though everything looked glorious on the outside, it may not have actually passed, like, you know, the checklist and the Bentley test. So, of course, I went in.
Scott's not coming in with me. I'm a big girl. I can go in on my own.
And I ordered a coffee.
Is that the beans that you use here, or are there other ones that you use?
Yes. So we use Union, and we also have like their decaf blend.
Oh, nice.
And we do a filter coffee. Scarlet.
Now, as you heard, the barista just said that the beans were roasted by a well-known specialty coffee company. She didn't go into more detail about that, though. Anyway, the milk frothing, it was perfect. Scott, you'd have loved it. It was all silent and, you know, the milk wand was purged. Big tick there. Now let's turn to the beans. The barista ground my coffee on demand. And it looked sparkly and clean. The grinder was immaculate. And the beans, they weren't black and oily, but they were a really good, like, sort of light shade of brown. But then came the latte art.
What do you make of that latte art?
I want Scott's opinion on this.
I think latte art is, I think if I was going to grade it, I'd grade it around a 0.
Now, the thing is that I feel like I want to give the barista a bit of a pass for this, because as soon as they went to do it, the first thing they admitted to was, I'm not very good at doing latte art. I can't really do it.
But like I said, latte art for me, if it was on a scale, you know, of importance, it would be very
Quite
low.
Yeah.
So the signs were pretty positive that I was about to get a nice tasting coffee, just except for the latte art not really hitting the spot. And I don't know, Scott, I think this is where perhaps maybe the framework is going to come a little bit undone.
Right. About to take a sip. It's nice. I can taste the milk in a good way. I actually quite like this.
Good.
I do like it.
I'll give it a go. It's definitely sort of a chocolatey sweetness.
Yeah.
There's no astringency to the coffee.
No.
It's very smooth. I'll be very happy to drink that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'll be very happy to drink that. Yep, Jules, you know, look, the framework held strong. What can I say?
All right, so I think, Scott, it would be pretty fair to say that, you know, the barometer for a banging brew would be if you see Caffeine magazine in a coffee shop that you walk into, that's it. You're cool. You're guaranteed to have a beautiful cup of coffee. If you don't see it, then you need to go through the Bentley checklist.
Well, I mean, I would say you should always go through the checklist. But I've heard stories of cafe owners going into other great cafes and picking up a stack of mags and then sneaking them off to their coffee shop. I'm not lying. I've heard this happen. So
For real?
For real.
Oh.
So hey, let's just say it's not 100% money back guarantee. You know, I don't want people tweeting me saying I had a crap coffee in here and it had Caffeine magazine. I want my money back.
Application. It was a lie. So we've done the 2 cafes so far, and, you know, the framework was holding up. But then James, being James, had something else up his sleeve, other than the fact that he made us walk for quite some time as well, with no idea where we were going to. At least, like, you know, I got my steps in. Anyway, so James found a loophole.
So the thing is, the cafe that I want to take you to literally opened today.
Oh, okay. So
Wow.
very new.
Okay.
So then this became the very big question. Would Scott send this cafe, newly opened, copies of his treasured and beloved caffeine magazine? Was it going to be up to scratch?
The interesting thing is, we did the walk past, and from the outside, you again couldn't tell. Is this going to be a really great coffee experience, or was it going to be pretty damn terrible? I mean, from the outside, you couldn't actually tell. Well, one of the things I'm noticing straight away is it's got the word artisan coffee.
Yeah, I just clocked that.
Acai bowls. Is that how you say? Acai bowls.
What would be your coffee experience here?
In all honesty, I don't know. I
Yeah.
need to get closer.
Let's get
Yeah.
closer.
Oh, what does this say? Support your local caffeine dealer, am I going to guess? Yes.
I'm still on the fence with this. I think it could very, very easily go either way.
So, of course, the only thing to do was to actually go into the cafe and get the lowdown.
Hello.
How's it going?
Thank you, going very well.
Thank you.
So you opened today?
Yes, actually our soft opening today.
Oh,
Yeah.
well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So the milk wand, it was wiped, but it wasn't purged, but there were no pig squeals. The latte art,
And they look like they've done a good job.
it was actually really quite good, especially for it being done in a takeaway cup.
So the current blend is
Now, the customer service was absolutely great. And when it came to the beans, they actually roasted the beans themselves, and they were able to get pretty damn specific about it too.
Today we have coffee, special coffee of the day. It's from Myanmar.
Okay, so when they were grinding the beans for me, it was a very clean grinder for starters, so there wasn't like coffee grounds everywhere, always a good sign. And they ground
It's only their
on...
first day. I hope they weren't too dirty.
that would have been a pretty bad sign if it was filthy on soft launch day.
Day one.
But, yeah, they ground the beans on demand for me. And here's the thing, Scott. I didn't think they had, because it was so quiet I didn't hear it, and I assumed that they hadn't been done for me on the spot.
Yeah, sounds like the signs were pretty strong so far. It's not bad at all. Yeah, I think it's okay. I'll definitely drink that.
And it passed the taste test with flying colours.
This is one that I would also finish. It doesn't taste ashy.
It's not astringent. There's no bitterness. There's no sort of drying in the mouth.
And then, of course, came the killer question from James for you, Scott.
Would you allow this coffee shop to stock a caffeine magazine?
Yes, I think so. I think they are definitely up to scratch.
It's got the Bentley seal of approval.
Ka-ching! Okay, so how did we get to this conversation, Jules? What was the start of this episode?
This all stemmed from me having a pretty poor experience in a coffee shop. And yeah, just didn't tick the boxes that I thought it usually would.
And do you think that if you had this framework, you would have had a better experience?
Yeah. So, there is the chance that if I were to walk back into said coffee shop and I notice things immediately, like say, for instance, the milk wand was actually still dirty, and maybe I'm looking and seeing that the people ahead of me are being served and it's not being purged and wiped, or the grinder is a bit grubby looking and the beans don't look that great. The two things I could do, I could just not order a coffee and have something else while I'm there, maybe just get myself a pot of Earl Grey, or I could leave. Like, I do have the option of not having to be in that coffee shop as well and having a bad coffee. So it has been incredibly helpful.
Something we should probably discuss in a later podcast is what happens when you follow the checklist and you still get a bad cup of coffee.
Ooh.
Do you take it back?
That feels like a whole new episode.
But actually, how do they know if they need to get better at something if you don't tell them that it's wrong? And will they listen to you? It's something we need to discuss at another point.
Okay, Scott, I'm going to have to call time on this conversation and where this could potentially be going. I think it's time for us to roll to the credits.
You can support the show on Patreon. Yes, that's patreon.com/Adventures in Coffee.
Now, Patreon is a platform where just for the price of a coffee a month, you can help us bring you even more juicy content and be an integral part of Adventures in Coffee.
I mean, we're all freelancers here, and we want to make more episodes more consistently for you, but we kind of need that steady income. So, Jules, if our dear listener would love to help us out here, what are they going to get for their money?
Dear listener, you will get access to discount codes to a coffee subscription service, and coffee brewing gear, and if you happen to be made of money, you can come along and dethrone the King of Caffeine.
That's right, and we're in the middle of planning Series 3 now, and we'll be asking our patrons directly what they want to hear about. You get to vote on what we make our episodes about in the future.
So you want to do this. Please come and join the community and chat to us directly by following the link in the show notes. This podcast was produced by James Harper, the creator of coffee podcast Filter Stories.
He also wrote and tinkles the ivories in the background, and editing was also done by Romeo Ronald Lamora.
Now, dear listener, you know what's coming. If you like the show, you can also help other people out there find it by leaving a review on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us get picked up by those pesky algorithms.
Do you know, Jules, we actually got a 4-star review. I'm absolutely seething at that.
Oh!
5 stars only, please, people.
Only 5.
You can also follow Caffeine Magazine on Instagram at Caffeine Mag. You can also follow the lovely Jules at Lady Velo. And James Harper also throws a bits and bobs up on the interwebs as well at Filter Stories Podcast.
And in our next episode, James Harper, our producer man, is going to be showing us why coffee isn't forever.
He's going to take us back in time and tell us an amazing story how a once very prosperous coffee producing country had the whole thing wiped out in just 15 years.
And we will leave you with this, dear listener. Even today, you are not going to be able to find this country's coffee in the supermarket. But in the meantime, we look forward to being poured back into your ears again soon. Until then, take care.
Bye-bye.